So, hello and welcome everyone to our discussion with Anthony Jauneaud on interactive storytelling and narrative design. We're here at the D6 Learning stream, ready to talk about hopefully very interesting things, answer your questions, and also mention the fact that Anthony is teaching at D6 Learning. So, let's get that out of the way. Let me first of all link you to the D6 Learning site, which I will post in the chat. Here it is. And we would also like to invite you to our Discord server where you can, find out about new courses, new events, new discussions, all the things that are happening, and also chat with us on a variety of subjects. Now, on to Anthony, who is actually a narrative designer and a writer for games. You have worked on Nightcall, Dordogne. Do I spell that correctly? Do I pronounce it correctly?
It's fine, yeah.
Okay, it's fine. And there were lots of games like Battlestar Galactica Scattered and Plague Tale Requiem, a variety of games, mostly through his narrative-focused studio actezéro. Now, how was that?
That's perfect.
Thank you. So, thanks so much for being here, Anthony. Welcome, and feel free to very briefly introduce yourself too.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the invite. It's been almost a year since we actually met for the first time in real life. Yeah, it was a nice memory.
Yes.
So very quickly, hello everybody. So my name is Anthony. I've been working in games for 16 years now. I studied cinema and screenwriting in Paris, and then I started in the game industry in 2009, which is a very long time ago, because the term narrative design was not exactly as common as it is today, and I didn't exactly know what was my role back then. I worked at Ubisoft on a very strange game/experience/app called Ozen, which was announced at the weirdest Ubisoft E3 show ever in 2010, which was about managing your stress and through exercises and breathing. It was very strange, and I worked 4 years on that game, and then I moved on to Asobo, where I worked on HoloLens games, and I worked on the prototype for Plague Tale, which at the time was not called Plague Tale. And I worked there for almost 2 years, and then I moved to England to work in Sheffield at Sumo Digital. I was a narrative designer on Dead Island 2, which is not which was the second iteration of the game, and the third iteration came out last year. So it was I really wanted to have a AAA experience. I had a AAA experience.
Just for credit, yeah. Always.
Yes. No. It was extremely. I think it's a very common saying, but you learn a lot from very difficult situations. You learn when you're facing a really steep challenge, and it was a very challenging production. And then after that, we had the chance to get our indie game funded with my business partner at the time. So we made Nightcall in 2017, and it came out in July 17th, 2019, probably like a week after A Plague Tale, which was it was like a yeah a weird timing experience. And then we worked on a second game, which is Flat Eye, which you can see behind me, which is a narrative management game set in Iceland. And then we tried to get a new game funded, and we couldn't. And I got really busy with my own studio. So actezéro was created in 2021. And it's a narrative agency. We do writing, we do dialogues, we do characters, we do world building, we do all sorts of creative services. Sorry, for games, and not even none for other stuff than games even now. And it's been 6 years now, 5 years now. Sorry, and we worked on more than 50 projects. We worked with something like 35, 36 different clients. So it's been very busy.
Mm.
And here I am.
Okay, so that you have been busy. You have been busy, and that is always a good thing. But my question is, like, how exactly did you jump from cinema to Ubisoft? Was like, hello, I'm Anthony, and I would like to do things with you guys.
It's kind of a funny story, I would say, is that I had a blog at the time because I was. So when I was studying script writing, I had a blog, which was a thing back in the days. I had a blog about my journey as I was trying to get into the two most famous screenwriting school in France, so La Fémis and le Conservatoire, which is another school dedicated to screenwriting. So I had a blog, and I was like I was writing articles about the movies I was analyzing and the exercises I was doing and so on. And then as I was starting to finish my screenwriting school, and I was not really excited to do television shows in France because it's a very, I mean, if you're French, you know why. If you're not French, the quality level is not that high, was not that high at the time. It's a bit better now. Contrary to most beliefs, people think that we have like, I think we have a pretty good cinema, but the television was not that good.
The cinema is excellent and has always been. I mean, from the 60s. Easily.
Yeah. But yeah, television was not the same exactly. And I really wanted to do video games, but I didn't know how to get in. Mostly because I think that the beginning of the 2000s, most of the writing was actually done either by external people, especially like Hollywood writers, that would come on a project and write a bunch of story beats or character profiles, and then the team was just trying to rewrite or rearrange the whole thing. And it was not like you had a few people, especially in France. You had maybe, I don't know, 5-10 people who would actually do writing for games, but it was not like an actual known role. So it was really hard for me to understand or guess how you could get in. I sent so what I was doing is that I was sending emails. I was just playing a game made in France, or any game, and I would write down the names of the actual writers, and I would send them emails. I would just write like first name dot last name at ubisoft.com. I would just send a bunch of emails. I sent probably like 200 of them, and one person replied. He had been writing the story for Tom Clancy Hoax, which was a Ubisoft game with geopolitical narrative, like Tom Clancy stuff about airplanes. Sorry. And I said, yeah, I want to know how you wrote the game and so on. And he said, I wrote the game because I was the only one who could actually do it on the team. But I'm not a writer, and now I'm a producer at Ubisoft, and I need someone to write the game I'm working on right now. And for some reason, that connection, that email, the fact, then he read my blog, then he called me and he was like, we need to see each other, we need to have a coffee and so on. I think that this is something that would not really happen today
Yeah.
anymore, for a lot of reasons. I know
Though,
I was.
admittedly, when looking at the chat, I have to say that Dan Griliopoulos points out that this was a very similar thing, a very similar situation in the
Yeah,
UK too, because he also
yeah,
remembers the first game writer in K100 was Rihanna Pratchett while working on Divine
yeah,
Divinity. And
yeah.
quick parenthesis, I have to say that everyone, please feel free to ask any questions. In the
Yes,
chat, we'll either get to them, at the end, or if they fit the flow of the conversation, I'll pass them on
sure,
to
sure.
you, Anthony.
And hi, Dan, by the way. Yeah, I think that I was probably in the last years where you could actually do that. You could actually just, show up
Mm,
somewhere and knock on the door and be
yeah.
like, I know how to write. And the team was like, oh, good. That's a good idea. Whereas
Mhm.
now I think that you have to jump through
Yeah.
so many more hoops to get into a job. Like it's kind of it's
So
kind
you,
of
you
mental.
didn't have a 30-hour long test.
In a way, I did. I worked. Ubisoft absolutely hated me back in the days, because 2 years before, I rejected an offer to be a tester on a game at Ubisoft
Hmm.
in Paris. And I did a test. They offered me the job, and I was like, actually, I think I can. I think I should do the school rather than be a tester. And I think they really hated me for that. So they really didn't want to. They really, really didn't want to hire me. And my producer was just like, no, it's gonna be him. I want Anthony to be the writer of
Mm.
the game. And then he fought for a weeks, and then I worked probably like an entire week. So it was 2009, probably August, September, and I worked a couple of days here and there just to show what I would do,
Okay.
which was crazy because I was not a game writer. I never worked on the game before, and then I was imagining how I would do it and delivering that to a team that didn't know how
It's,
to do. I mean, everybody was just trying to do stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
game
then
writing and
yeah,
narrative design were certainly not as rich in literature and
yeah,
examples and
yeah,
courses as it is
and
today.
yeah, I have a very, very clear memory of reading Clint Hawking's blog about narrative design. So Clint Hawking is a game director. I think he was narrative director on Far Cry 2, and I think he did uh, Watch Dog Legion, or I think he was creative director on that game. And he had a blog at the time in 2010, and he was like, yes, this discipline of writing for games is called narrative design. And I was just like at the office, it was late at night because we were finishing something, and I was just like, oh yes, that sounds very cool. And a year before, I didn't know anything about game writing.
Yeah, but no, I
So
mean,
yeah,
almost 16 years, 15, 16 years
yeah,
later, I imagine you've figured out quite a bit.
no.
No,
Yes, of
good.
course.
Because I
No,
was
no,
about,
yes, some stuff, yes, some stuff,
I
yeah.
was about to ask you, I mean, how do you generally approach narrative design? If there is something you can say in general, or if you want to be more
Yeah,
specific, how did you approach the narrative design of Nightcall, which is one of my
yeah.
favorite games?
Thank you.
Welcome, I love it.
So I think that for me, the main engine for my work and for what I have to do is actually the action of playing. I think that my work has to be quite fun and exciting to do. And if I'm not having a good time, I don't think the players are going to have a good time. I think that's the general approach for me, which is I need to be excited, interested. I need to seek new challenges with every new project, and I need to face every project with like renewed. Um, um, what's the
Excitement.
word?
I would
Just
say
excitement,
excitement,
but like
joy,
yeah,
or
yeah.
joy
It's
is a
really
nice word.
the idea of let me open my dictionary because I have the word on the tip of my tongue. And I think
You
that
never.
it has to be playful. That's the word I was looking
Mm,
for. It has to
mm,
be very playful, even if you're writing something very dark and depressing. But it has to be playful for me, so it's going to be playful for the player. So that's the general approach. Um, what I think is important is to me is that the act of writing, the act of creating in general, is also your own experience as you
mm,
discover what you need to discover. I think it's very hard to prepare everything in advance. I think it's not a really good idea to plan everything before. You need to
mm.
be surprised. You need to be an explorer of your own ideas and every time I can do that, I'll try to do it in a way which is like, for example, for Michael,
Mhm.
at the start we had like very clear and a very clear idea of the general scope of the game, and then I wrote a couple of dialogues just to get the length and understand how we would do them, and then one of the big questions on the team was like how is the game ending, and I was like no no, 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 no. I know how the game starts. I know exactly where and how, and I have the scene, and I think it's one of the first scenes I actually wrote. But the ending came like a year and a half later. Like suddenly one day I was finishing another scene and was like, oh, that's it. I have it. And then I wrote it in one draft. It changed a little bit, but it was like I finally reached that point where I knew where I was going, which I think is the most exciting part of writing. And um, of course, you can't do that on every project. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And but for me, like I really try to not have a clear idea of where I will end up in the end.
So you
It's
didn't
more
have
about
any idea, or not just a clear
no,
one?
no,
No
really
idea.
no,
Just start writing. The taxi
no.
driver and the
Yeah,
people going in and out. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
The thing for Nightcall. So for people who don't really know what's going on in Nightcall, you are a taxi driver. I mean, you're not really a taxi driver. The main character of the game is a taxi driver, and he's forced by a corrupt cop to investigate a serial killer in Paris. And in the process of that investigation, you meet almost 100 characters,
Mm.
which is way too much. The scope of that game is it's just effed up. And you meet different characters, and they will tell you about themselves. They will share intimate stories. They will reject sometimes you. They will yeah, you will be a confidant in a way. So
Mhm.
that was the initial concept. And the thing for me was that the main character cannot be clear. The player must be like unable to know what the actual character is thinking most of the time,
Mhm.
and the reason is that we don't want the player we don't want a character to be the player. We want those two entities to be separated.
Mhm.
So when I started to write, I was I was adamant on not delivering the ending because I didn't know who the character was until I reached certain other characters. I was like, okay, I think my character is going to be shocked by that information, which means that he is that kind of person. And then I was slowly creating the character as I was doing it. So
That is.
just to be clear, it works because I was the almost the only writer. We had a
Mm.
couple of guest writers on the project, and it's a very narrative heavy game, and I had like the whole game in my mind, and it was doable. But if I were working on a bigger game with a bigger team, I don't think I would have I would have been able to do that. So
Yeah, you
this
won't have
is
the
there is a
luxury. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that is true. But another question on this. Let's say you decide to write one of the people who enter the taxi, like one of the 100. Was it like a
Yeah.
standard way of approaching them, or did you just start writing dialogue with a vague idea of every character in your mind and you saw where
No,
that went?
no. So we had roughly 2 weeks, 2 week milestones.
Hmm.
Each week I was delivering on the morning roughly 10 or maybe 12 pitches for the characters. Sometimes the rest of the team was also bringing up ideas. Something would be like, oh yeah, I saw this documentary about this woman living in New York and doing fashion and so on, and then I was watching the documentary. I was like, yeah, that's a really cool character. We have to do something with her. So most of the time, we were starting with very basic concepts for the story, which were, for example, would be like, oh, this customer is a cat. This customer is three kids in a trench coat. This customer is a couple fighting, and so on and so on. And then, if the character was requiring to do some research, for example, if the topic was kind of hard, or if the if it was something that I was not really, it was not really personal. I think I usually spend a couple of hours, up to 2, 3, 4 days on some topics, to really research. Work quite hard to make sure I had all the info. One example would be, we saw it was in a magazine. We saw a story about Indian women who had beards, and they were like living in a village. They were kind of ostracized by their community, so they built a new one for themselves, and that was very interesting. And we were discussing this idea, and then for that topic, you need to research, you need to find out the real, where the fiction is going to be, where the reality is going to be. And then I was usually doing a longer pitch for the character, and then writing down some visual ideas for the artist. And then we had a meeting with the artist, and she would sketch some characters, and we would try to think about the emotions of the whole scene. So yeah, I was rarely opening my writing, my text editor, and just starting to write a dialogue.
Right.
It was more a matter of doing the research when it was necessary to make sure I was reaching the right.
Yeah, that does make sense.
It sounded true enough, at least.
Okay, awesome. Now, what would you do? I mean, how would you approach a larger project? Something with a team where you don't have to wear, the hat of a game designer, producer, narrative writer.
So when we work on bigger games, I think the first, for me, the how can I say that? Like, my number one concern is the risks, and it really shapes the way I work. So I would we were called to work on Harmony, Fall of Reverie, which was it's a visual novel by Dordogne. They had fired the previous writers. They had like 1 year to redo the entire game without producing any new asset. So we worked with the team. So they rewrote an entire new story based on all the work that happened before, of course. And then they asked us to write the dialogues for the game. And so the first question for me is like, what are the risks? How can I mitigate them? How can I prepare myself for the hard moments? What are the easy victories? This is very important when I'm an external partner. I really need to make sure I am able to do the work. And especially on Harmony, the biggest problem that we have was we need to breathe. We need to give so much life to these characters, and we have zero room for new assets. So it was really a matter of going through all the backgrounds and all the faces, all the emotions, all the music that was already made at the time, and then to just to try to understand the mood, and then to find the voice of the game through whatever was already there.
And having this type of constraints can be very interesting and maybe even helpful in a way.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that especially on this project, the whole team knew how challenging the task was, and then it makes it's easier because everyone is like, okay, we have 8 months to finish the game, and that's it. So we have to do our
Mm.
best. Whereas sometimes on other projects, they don't see the risks, or they want to they hope that the risk will just go away magically, but it never works that way. So
Can
yeah,
you give me
so
an
risk.
example
Yeah.
of a specific risk, like something that you have to specifically keep in mind?
Yeah. I think I can talk about Dordogne is quite interesting
Hmm.
because so I joined the project summer 2020, I think yeah. And the thing is, they wanted to make a game for everybody. It was a game that couldn't be too French, couldn't be too dramatic, couldn't be too long, too difficult. It's a game for everyone. So
Mm.
the fact that we had no constraints was actually a big constraint, because we were very limited. The key of every narration ever always is conflict. Every story is someone wants something and can't get it easily, or can't get it at all. And these are kind of big words. It could be something like, I'm thirsty and I want to drink a glass of water, or it can be, I want to save the world, but aliens are coming and trying to kill everyone. So really, like, conflict is at the heart of
Mm.
every story. And when you do a game for everyone that should be enjoyable for parents and kids, it's really hard because you can't be too dramatic. We wanted to be realistic. We wanted to explore the poetry that there is in the actual world around us. And so you can't have anything really bad happening to the characters. And then the first risk for me on Dordogne was like, how am I going to be able to write a 5 hour long game in which, like, nothing happens? I sorry, I did have quotes. Yeah. So it's very important because there is always something happening, but the question is, how do you make sure people are excited for the game, and how do you make sure that the story is interesting, that people
Mm.
will be interested, and they will be like, yes, I want to know the ending of the story, if there is no major big conflict. So that was an interesting risk. I think we
Mm.
kind of succeeded on that.
Okay.
uh, and sometimes it's a much more technical problem, or a technical risk. Like, I think that Battlestar Galactica is a good example, but most roguelikes we worked on, they are a roguelike is a very difficult genre to write for, because you don't really it's kind of hard to know what the player is going to see and when. And
Mm.
it forces you to break down the narrative into either uh, bits that are going to be connected by the player themselves, and then you need to trust the players, which is a very hard task. Or you need to find like a system or a way to make sure players will discover the story the way you want it. But then it creates a lot of
Okay.
difficulties, like technical difficulties.
Okay, let's get a bit back to Dordogne because I do have one question from the chat, which is, what exactly does
Yeah.
to French mean? I mean, in my mind, I do remember reading reviews of games in the 90s saying that this is an obviously French game. So I do have a specific thing in mind. But
So can you ask the question again? I'm not sure I
like,
understood.
what does to French mean? I mean,
Oh,
having
yes, yeah,
the
yes,
brief that it shouldn't be.
yeah. Um, there is something very interesting with fiction, is that the you need to find the right distance between the audience and the object of the story, so everyone will be, I think most people will be interested in it. If we were telling a story that works only if you know all the like French references, or if it's
Mm.
something that will apply to French culture, it's very good for French people because they will enjoy it even more. They will see a game that
Mm.
is for them. But then, if you are from Germany, if you're from Poland, if you're from Russia, if you're from Japan, if you're from Brazil, then suddenly the game is like, I don't understand why it's very important. So you need to find the right distance. When I say it was not too French, is that one of the main ideas behind the game was the concept that your relationship to your grandparent and the house they live in and the lives that they had before you is something that
Hmm.
I think most kids would be interested in because it's a bit mysterious. These are people you don't see every day,
Hmm.
but they have long lives. They are very, very old. When you're 5 or 6 years old, you don't really understand what it means to be 60. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Should I play this with my daughter?
How old is she already? She's 7.
She's almost 7. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the right age. Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
think it's the right age.
very
It's
intriguing.
yeah. It's a very easy game,
Yeah.
also. Yeah, and so when I mean French is I think that if you one of the main the two main inspirations for Dordogne were Andrei Tarkovsky's work.
Mm.
So nostalgia. I'm not sure about the childhood of Ivan. I'm not sure if it's the title in English now. Ever The Mirror and those movies
Man.
are not, yeah, those movies are they have some elements that don't make a lot of sense because they are 60 50-year-old movies, but also they were made in Soviet Russia. It's a very different world,
Mm.
and we get some of like most of it. It's there for us now, but some elements are a bit lost. And I think for movies it's fine, but for a game that is coming out now on Steam,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard. You know what I mean? Like,
It's I don't know. Do you feel that there is room for actually deeply experimental and wild and innovative or very
yeah,
weird games in a professional manner, though? I mean, something that would sustain people. I mean,
yeah,
you do have in cinema, you have like major studios paying for art movies.
yeah.
Could we do that in games, perhaps?
The thing for me, the thing for me that doesn't really work right now, I think, is that we are not funding smaller games enough.
Mm.
Like we should, there should be a way or another to help smaller games, smaller teams, more creative, wilder games to exist.
Mm.
And this is how technically this is how most industries work. You divert a bit of your money towards a younger, not I mean younger in the sense of less experienced
Mm.
people. You give them a bit of money, a bit of time, a bit of space, a bit of like some tools, so they will be able to like try and explore stuff, and hopefully you bring these people to a certain level after which you can they can be part of the bigger system. I
Mm.
think cinema does that extremely well. Especially, I think it was especially the case in the 70s and in the 80s. People were coming out of film school and they were making very small budget movies. You can, I mean, the new Hollywood is like I think works on only like that. It's they were made like Spielberg, Scorsese, De Palma,
Mm.
Lucas. They made very very small movies, or they made TV movies, and then they were able to make something a bit different. And we don't have that in the systemic way in the game in the video game industry. We have that because we have smaller teams and they do amazing stuff.
Yeah, but they risk a lot. I mean, they
Yeah, yeah,
they really do risk a lot.
yeah.
And again, speaking of risk, I mean, when it comes to narrative design and game writing in general, d- do you think there are specific mistakes that are too common, too easy to actually replicate that we should tell people to try and avoid? I mean, something that completely stands out,
Huh.
something that instantly
Hmm.
comes to mind.
Huh. Yes, there is one thing that really bothers me all the time. It's the there is I would say people have a very difficult. So we have an expression in French which is la carte et le territoire, which is the map and the territory.
Hmm.
It means that it's not because you have seen something on a map means you can understand how big it is, how real it is, how complex it is. And almost every project I, I worked on is I pitch an idea and people are like, yeah, sure, it's a good idea, but it feels a bit cliche. It's like, yes, it's called a process. It's called like iteration. We're gonna like, do you like this idea?
Mm.
Another example I would give is a lot of people want their game to be as complex, as powerful, as deep, as meaningful as the Lord of the Rings, but it's I mean Tolkien didn't wake up one morning and he had everything solved in his head, and he wrote down everything in one draft and sent it. It's
It's 40
25,
years.
30 years
Yeah.
of writing, and it's years and years of studying, and it's research, and when you read the letters that he was the letters around the when he was finishing the Lord of the Rings, he's still he's like hesitating about everything, and he's changing characters, and he's us, of course, like now 80 years after, we see, oh no, not that much, oh, almost like 50, 60 years, 70 years, 70 years later,
Mhm.
we see these books, sorry, as something which is it's so deep and powerful, but it's a lot of work, and it's really hard for people to get that.
Yeah.
So it's for me, every time I work, I start on a new project, I'm like, you have to trust me, it's going to be a
Mm.
process, we're going to start. I want you to be on board, I want you to be excited as much as I am by the stories and the characters, and the complexity, that the depth is going to come after a
Yeah.
while, because we are exploring that together, and it's very
And,
hard.
and we do have a comment to actually, illustrate your point, which is Matthew says that he had a producer once ask him in an interview for a Tarantino-like script, something just like that.
Yeah, sure,
Give me Tarantino,
sure,
because
yeah,
instantly
sure,
those things. Oh dear God!
sure.
And I imagine that your and sorry,
Hi, Matthew.
this will have to be a plug for the course, because I mean, I think that
Yeah,
what you describe now sort of ties in with your idea for prototyping the narrative for a
yeah,
game via a short story. I mean, this is
yeah,
something that can be cliched but can be expanded upon.
yeah.
And
So just to give a bit of context, when I was working on Dead Island 2, we were for a lot of different reasons. I'm not gonna get into because we don't have 6 hours in front of us. We were constantly changing the scope, and thus we were constantly changing the tone and the story of the game. And after a while, I was starting to. It was really hard because I had like almost every maybe 2 months, I had to sit down and rewrite a 10-page synopsis with new characters and new goals and new antagonists and so on and so on. And it was very difficult to not only to write it because it's my job and I'm excited, but it was very very hard for other people in the team to be involved and to read the synopsis every 2 months and be like, yes, I know how to read 10 page. It's very very hard. So I came up with the idea of having like a big spreadsheet with a lot of colors and emojis, and I could just print on a big A3 sheet, and then I was putting in at the entrance of the studio so people could walk by and take a look and be like, okay, the story has changed. It's good. It was okay. But then when I was moving into more indie. I was starting to work with more indie studios. I realized that spreadsheet is kind of difficult to read when you are in a less studio in a studio in an environment which is less. How can I say that without sounding patronizing in either way? When
less
you work with
structured.
indies,
Less.
yes,
Yeah.
they are usually a bit less structured, which is a good thing because if you're four people and you're working like you were 400, there is something wrong probably.
Mm.
And so I came up with the idea that a short story is kind of the perfect way to right away get in touch with the vision, with the game, with the team. And so my goal was to write those like 2, 3, 4 page long short stories, which were like not really a player journey, which is something that we do also in narrative design or in design in general, where you write from the point of view of the player, the experience, and you talk about the buttons that you pressed and then the menus and yeah. But it was more about how do you like what's the fantasy is going to be. Like I'm gonna be so a good example would be if I were to write a short story about The Witcher, I would pick one specific quest, and I would spend a lot of time writing about how Geralt is a bit reluctant to help other people and is seen as, I would get into more
Mhm.
details and tones rather than the combat or stuff like that. And
Mhm.
the short story is a wonderful way for me to, as a freelancer, as a writer, to meet the client, to show what I can do, and to already show like the depth that we can achieve if we work together and if we explore ideas together. Then
Sure.
we can maybe reach that short story feel in at the end.
Got it. Now, I won't get too much on. I don't want to ask you anything else on the short
Yeah.
stories things. I mean, we will have a live presentation of the course on the 9th of April. So everyone, I've pasted the
Yes.
link. You're more than um, we
Yes.
will be more than happy to have you there. But there's a very interesting question by Supreme 2778. So the question is, how helpful was the study of screenwriting from a narrative design point of view? It's like, would you recommend it? And they have been working in films for about 2 years, and were interested in film school and this sort of thing. Would that help them more than actually, going into game design? I mean, what would you?
Hmm.
How would you start nowadays if you want to focus on narrative design? If you're someone who
Yeah.
writes well and understands the interactivity of the medium, how would you approach
Okay.
it? Besides taking their
So
course, obviously.
yeah, yeah. Of course.
Obviously.
Don't do the course if you think it's gonna get you a job right away. Please,
Yeah, no
please
one is going to get a job ever. That's
no.
fine. Don't worry.
Jobs are cancelled anyway.
Yeah.
No. So there are two questions. The first one is I think my screenwriting school gave me like help, like in a way it was a shortcut
Mhm.
to turn a lot of exploration into like knowledge. I think there is a big difference between I want to know more about the topic and I know more about the topic, then I can move on more difficult topics. The screenwriting school is there's stuff now in my head that it's kind of hard to not think about, which is also a problem. But it gave me a lot of tools just to get the idea if a story can work, which is it's a weird stuff. At one point, it turns into kind of a second sense, like a sixth sense.
Mhm.
Sorry, it's like okay, that's a cool story you want to do for your game, but it's not going to work because there is 18 different points. And this is something that comes from experience, and in a way the school like saved me maybe 5 or 10 years of trying to write stories. So that was really really good. Now, would I recommend? Yes, I would. I think it's you will not lose time if you decide to do that,
Mhm.
but nobody's gonna hire you because you have a better understanding of screenwriting. And the reason is that everybody thinks that writing is easy. Everybody thinks that writing it can't be that hard to have ideas, and everybody thinks that if they really wanted to, they could write a novel or something like that. It's very. I mean, I've been doing that. I've been doing my job for 16 years. I don't know how many times I've been
Mhm.
asked about like, oh, you have this idea. It could be a great novel, right? And I was like, sure, but ideas are you can't copyright them for a reason. It's an idea. Everybody has ideas. It's because we are human beings. We all have ideas, but then being able to sit down and write a novel, write a game, write a short story, write a play, whatever you want to create, paint, and so on. And I don't think that I would never in my entire life say to a painter, I think I could paint.
Yeah.
I
Seriously,
think I
I'm
could
looking at the
write music.
comments. I'm looking at the comments because I mean, first of all, Dan says that it's definitely the most undervalued skill set. Then Hit says, just open Microsoft Word. That's it. It's as easy
Yes.
as that. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah. Something, and this is interesting, and I do feel that people who create stuff in order to entertain other people, to stuff that considers itself art or not, it's fine. I think they have to a degree sort of educate the audiences in the nuances of what's going in front of their eyes. And when it comes to, there's also the question. There's this interesting question by sorry, Crimson Blade. Is that, would you say that the best way to learn about game writing as a newcomer is to just play games? If so, what should we focus on, and what should we take notes about while playing? And before you answer that, I would really have to point out that the best way to start writing is to actually read a lot. I mean, if you ask me, this is my suggestion. I mean, you
Yeah,
must read a lot. You have
yeah,
to know how other people write and how they write well and why
yeah,
they write well. So, and that's
yeah.
onto you now.
So I completely agree. I think that if you want to, it can't. There is not the. Well, sorry. I need to calm down because it's my favorite topic. I
Okay.
have a very, very vivid memory of one of my students who came to me. He came to talk to me after a class, and he said, "Oh, I really want to write a play. Do you have any advice on how to write a play?" And I said, "I have no idea. I never wrote a play." And he said, "Okay, cool. But where would you start?" And I said, "Yeah, maybe you should read a play." And he said, "Oh, I never read a play." And it's like, okay, so you want to you want to write a play, but you actually don't know why you want to write a play, and you never read one. And I think that I would never start to do a game or write a novel without reading or trying to make one, or with them is kind of, I don't know. I was kind of surprised. I mean, it was a young
Yeah.
student, and I really liked the way he was kind of surprised by this idea that the first step to do something is actually read the thing. And I think it's a twofold thing. It's, you need to, like, if you want to write something, you need to read. You need to get like the kind of tone and the style, the way other people are actually doing it.
Hmm.
But also you need to do it. You need to sit down and just start to write. You need to find something small that you can finish, and you need to be able to commit a bit every day or every week to finish something. And it's far from being perfect, but I would
Mhm.
really recommend trying to do the NaNoWriMo thing, which was cool 10 years ago, and now they do AI, so it's kind of suck. But NaNoWriMo is basically, it's called, so it's National Novel Writing Month. It's every November, from November
Mhm.
1st to November 30th, and you have to you need to write a 50,000 word novel in those 30 days.
Mhm.
And it's very hard. It's very cool. I failed often. I succeeded 3 times. I'm super excited about what I wrote. And then it's only by writing that you can become a writer. It's the same as running. It's because you run often and regularly that you can one day hope to do a marathon. And it's the only way. There is no other way. There is no magical potion, or, I
Mhm.
mean, you can build a robot, but then you're not actually running, which is AI. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's something we
And
don't want to.
it's I mean,
Yeah.
but by the way that AI, I mean, an LLM is structured, it cannot really write something novel. It cannot. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
impossible for it to do so. Anyway, I have to point out that again, Dan is making a very interesting point that people who want to be writers don't necessarily want to write. They're just in love with the idea of being writers. They
Yes.
and this is true. And then there's this question
It's
which
very
also
true.
ties in with something I would like to ask. It's like Cursor asks, if you want to design your first game as a beginner, how long should it be? I would say short, and then leave it on to you. And my question
Yes.
that comes with this together is like, in your job, like when you write for a game, when you structure its narrative, how much game design do you actually do? I mean,
Okay.
those two things.
Okay. Okay. So, you right now you download Twine or Ink, or Infuse or any other narrative interactive fiction storytelling tool there is out there. It's free, and you write something that can be finished in 10 minutes. It's gonna take you days to get a 10-minute game. And the one of the courses I was giving to students at one point was we were doing an escape game in ink, which is it's an interactive fiction writing tool, which is very, very cool. It's super powerful, and I was giving them like a basic structure about an escape game, which was you are in a room, and you have 10 units of time or whatever to get out of the room, and then you can have as many choices, and it can be as complex as you want. And for me, that's a game. You have options, you have choices, and yeah. And if you can do that, if you can write something which can be finished in 5 or 10 minutes, it's already a really good step. And then you can do a 20-minute long game, and then a 30, and then an hour, and so on and so on. It's very important. If you want to start, you need to start small. If you want to write a novel, first write a short story. And the thing is, of course, you will always find people, amazing writers who one day just wake up, open their Word app, and just start to write the perfect finished novel. I don't think it's real. I think it's fake. I think this is not credible at all. Writing is very, very hard, and I think that the best way to do it is to actually do a first draft. It's awful, it's terrible, it's very, very bad, but then the actual work can start, which is, how am I turning this pile of crap into something good? Second question was about game design. So
Yes.
it really depends on the project, and I think that it's something that I miss deeply. I think that if I could go back in time and change, I mean, I would change a lot of things, but I think that I would love to be a bit more comfortable with programming, and about like being able to code and being able to do design in every possible way. And I think the question that we had earlier was, what is the right path to be a game writer now? I think the right path now in 2026 is you need to be able to have an idea, prototype it by yourself, implement it by yourself, scope it by yourself. You need to be able to be your own producer, your own programmer, your own designer when you want to do a feature for a game. This is the only way you're gonna be taken seriously, I think, because again, ideas are extremely simple to have, and everybody can have ideas. Not everybody can turn an idea into something the whole team can test and be like, okay, this is a good feature that we want to do.
Though I do have to make again a small point and say that there are some ideas that admittedly are impressive. They're very rare, but
Yeah,
there are occasions when you listen to an idea and you say suddenly, okay, yes, that is it. That solves like 30% of all problems we have,
yeah,
and you know, but you cannot count on those.
no,
We have to admit, it's like, I mean, they
no,
do
no.
occur, but it's a very rare thing for an idea to really matter.
Mm. And so to talk about design a little bit, I think
Mhm.
that interactive fiction, especially if you're in a space, if you're doing a visual novel, I think you have so much space to explore as a writer. When you're writing a novel, you already have a lot of different space where you can explore. It's like, is it a first person? Is it third person? Is it a structured novel with chapters? Are you alternating chapters? These are already decisions, and every time you make a decision, you are creating something, and you are a designer. And I think that I'm going to use Game of Thrones for a second, but the Game of Thrones, the novels, the fact that these are extremely long chapters with very specific point of views.
Mhm.
The story is not told in a very linear way. It's kind of broken, and then you get a bit back in time, and then you move, and then for like half a book, you don't see a character, but it creates this feeling of a sprawling world which is so much bigger than everybody else. And this is why I think these books are so successful. Also, it's the design choices that Martin made are so good. It's so powerful, and it's so modern. It's way more modern. I think this is where the Game of Thrones is like shines, I think, for me. And so when you're doing a visual novel, it's, do you have choices? How are the choices written? Are they direct sentences? Are they ideas about the kind of answers you want to give? I really like Obsidian made a game called Alpha Protocol. Sorry,
Mm.
and the idea in Alpha Protocol, which is a Jason Bourne, James Bond. I don't remember the Jack Power simulation. I think they were using the JB, the three JBs at their narrative design vision. And so every choice is mapped on the. You have three buttons, and they are always the same tone. So you're not really, when someone is asking you something, you don't see the actual answer, but you are shown the tone of the
Mm.
answer. Are you aggressive? Are you sly? And this is such a brilliant idea. I mean, some people will not like it. They like the big paragraph of text you see in Baldur's Gate, for example. But yeah, these are narrative choices that you have to do. You have to make, sorry, those choices, and this is the best moment, I think, as a narrative designer. Is like who is the narrator? Like, do I have a do we hear the inner thoughts of the main characters? Are we allowed to not answer? Can we be silent? Do I speak, like, does the main character speak different languages? Those are questions you need to ask yourself and see if they are inspiring and if they are, again, playful. Yeah.
So, would you say that what actually makes a story work in video games is the fact that we have choices, and this is what we should embrace, as opposed to
Yes.
mediums like a book or a film or something like that. So it's
Yes.
this is what should be at the core of our thought process when writing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Um, the main difference between a novel for me and a game as a writer, or a short story, or, I mean, any kind of linear prose, is that
Hmm.
I can give options, I can give choices to players so they can have more or less information, or they can explore other areas of the dialogue, or the characters. One thing that I really like to do now in most games is to have a choice which is basically a tell me more choice. I'm giving you information on something, and then there is a choice which is, but tell me more. Like, I really want to understand the concept. I really want you to tell me what nihilism is. And this option for me is kind of brilliant, because when you're writing a short story, you you can't really do that, or a novel, you can't really do that. You can't really be like, oh, I wish some people will explore this thing. So it's a matter of choices that I think writing prose, linear prose, is, I'm gonna make the choices I need for the reader, and then when you're making a game, it's, I'm gonna give, like, more choices to players so they can explore something else.
But still, you always retain a structure and then specific outcome for your story, or do you change outcomes depending on what players choose? I mean, generally speaking, the question would be, how do you balance,
Yeah.
the agency of the player
So
and the choice
yeah,
with the structure of your story?
so there is a budget constraints, first of all, which is, you can't have 25,000 million different endings. First of all, it's not helpful.
I mean,
It
it's very
doesn't.
difficult to write a single good ending. Writing 20 of
Yes, yeah.
those would be impossible.
So the example, like, I was giving to the students, to my students all the time, was, let's imagine that you were playing a game which was Lord of the Rings, and you have a choice at one point. You are playing Frodo, and it's, you want to go south, but you can also go east, north, or west. It's not the same story, and it's not the game. I mean, yeah, you go north and you escape and you try to flee flee Middle Earth. It's not. It's gonna be a very, very different story for everyone. Maybe it's the core of your game. You want players to be able to be a giant coward, which is fine. But the way the world is shaped is helping the story, because it turns out he can't really go west, he can't really go north, he can't really go east. He has to go south, and then it leads to the story that we all know. So that's the first point. The second point is I don't think, but that's a hot take. I don't think players love having different endings. I don't think it's what is really exciting. I think what is more exciting to players, it's the idea that you can shape the story, which I think is a very different beast. And for me, one of the best uh, management or handling of endings is probably The Witcher 3.
Mm.
It's when you reach the ending, you will see the whole game will be mostly the same. I don't think you're missing out on anything, but the way the relationships with the characters are ending, the way the future is shaped is very different, and you feel acknowledged, heard, or rejected by the game, depending on the choices that you made, and it turns the story into something personal.
Hmm.
I don't think it would have made sense for example, like oh, you can kill the king and now you're the king, and then it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and what you're saying from The Witcher also applies to, one of my favorite quests of all time, which is the Red Baron quest, which is, I mean, the
Yeah,
thing doesn't really change, but the
yeah,
way you look at it really changes depending on what you choose to say and what you choose to
yeah,
do. But it's still
yeah,
just a fetch quest. That's it.
yeah, yeah. And it's what's interesting. What is interesting with this quest, I think, it's the idea of the point of view. You have one point of view for the first half of the quest, and then
Hmm.
when you start to look around, when you start to explore, if you want to, you understand a bit more about the characters and what actually happened, and then you are a real detective, and you are really exploring the narrative in a wonderful way. And I think this is, you can't, of course you can't do that for every game cannot have that kind of freedom or that kind of budget, uh, but yeah, it's a really good quest for a lot of reasons, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it's a favorite one. So, I mean, speaking of open worlds, this is also an interesting and very difficult thing to handle. It's like, how do you tackle narrative coherence in something that's like an open world game, or a roguelike, even worse, or
Yeah,
anything non-linear, effectively.
yeah, so this is very, very difficult.
Mm.
It's a bit nightmarish. So I think that for a roguelite you need to, I think it's kind of the same for an open world. You have to rely a lot on the player progression, but literally like the what has the player achieved so far. I think that's really like the big thing. Like if you're doing a visual novel or if you're doing a narrative, like an adventure game and so on, it's going to be more about the emotional beats and the way the story progresses and so on. If you're doing a roguelite, I think the main thing is what has the player achieved as the player, and then what does it mean for the main character or the main characters.
Mhm.
I think a good example of that is ADs, like they know, or any kind of roguelike like that. It's the player has faced enemies, bosses, and then the player has died, and then the main character comes back, and you have to really care about the player's point of view about the whole system. I think this is why it's very important. Most of the when we work on roguelikes, one of the big thing we ask of the developers is what is the link between the story, like the story and the game progression. Like, do we earn a specific currency that we can use to unlock the story, which is what Hades does. It's basically you almost every run you get an item you can give to a player, you can give to an NPC, and the NPC, the relationship with the NPC evolves. And of course they have a lot of money and they have a lot of talent, so it's beautiful and gorgeous and moving and whatever. um, but sometimes often we have discussion with devs, and they're like, oh, no, 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 we don't want a specific currency or a specific system. It's like, yeah, sure, then you can't have 80s. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. And so open world, so I've never didn't really work on a lot of open worlds, fortunately, I don't know. When I was working on Dead Island, the big thing was it really depends about how far the information can go. I think this is why. So if you play Assassin's Creed, for example, you can kill someone in a city, and it's not going to change the rest of the world because the world is it's the antiquity, or it's the information doesn't travel very fast, so it's not a big problem. But this is a phone is the writer's worst enemy. It's like the worst invention there ever was for writers, because now if you do like a modern game, you can just call people and tell them information. You can't hide anything. You can't. It's kind of a nightmare. I don't know how I would do it.
That is true, but that's also a very interesting concept. I mean, this the radius of information. This is a very, very interesting way to pace things, especially if I mean, I'm thinking of open world narrative design, which again is something I've never really done either, obviously. I'm thinking something like the campaign map for a tabletop RPG. So I mean, you have specific things happening at specific places, regardless of when you enter them. So they're just good. So I have to point out that we're already past the 1 hour mark. So please, everyone, if you have any more questions and comments, start writing them down so that we can pass them on to Anthony for him to answer. And having said that, another very interesting question is, I mean, how would you say that the optimal collaboration between a narrative designer and the rest of the teams, like the design team, the level design team, the artists, the programmers, how does this thing work?
You need to take a lot of precautions. You need to be very respectful of everyone else, and wait for the same in return. What I'm trying to do is, as much as possible, to find a common ground. Something I can share with the rest of the team. Usually a lot of references that I can use to tell to people the story we're making is basically sorry, excuse me. So the main story is basically the Lord of the Rings, but from the point of view of this character. And then most people will know Lord of the Rings, and they'll be like, sure, okay. Excuse me, I'm trying to sneeze for like 5 minutes. It's a nightmare.
Please sneeze. Please.
I can't. Free. It's gone now.
Oh, dear. I'm so sorry for that.
So recently I've been working. So the thing I'm trying to get is sometimes some jobs, some people will not share a lot of information with you because they think it's irrelevant. Recently, I've been asking a lot about the marketing, which is, I don't know, it doesn't sound very creative, but at one point, I need to sit down with the marketing people and ask them, how are you going to sell the game? Like, are you going to sell the freedom of the story? Are you going to sell the world? Are you going to sell the character? And this idea of having this is something that you can see a lot in marketing documents, is what we call persona. So it's you kind of try to figure out who's going to be the main buyers of your game, and then how do you please or attract or convince them to buy the game. And I think it's a bit cynical, but I rather like to know about that soon. I really like to know that earlier than later, and to think like, okay, you are going to sell the game based on nostalgia, for example. So I need to find a way in my narrative to have that as well.
How accurate would you say that this type of estimates are?
How accurate?
I mean, do we actually know? I mean, even nowadays, if you ask someone like, who bought Disco Elysium, like, everyone, I don't know.
Yeah, it works.
Weird.
It works because for me it's kind of how do you say that in English? Auto. Oh, Jesus.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, thank you very much.
I am inside your mind, you see.
So good. I was like, yeah. If you are putting money in a very specific area and
Mhm.
you kind of market your game towards that area, then of
Yeah.
course these people are gonna be interested in your game because they will know about it. The biggest problem now, it's like you want to you, okay you're making a really good game, but the problem is the people who will be interested with your game, they don't know about it. They have no idea. They know
Mm.
nothing. They have never heard about your game before. They will never hear about it ever. Yeah, it's your turn.
Sorry, I
I was
sneezed though. I muted myself when I
Yeah,
sneezed. I feel
I
bad
wrote
for that.
I wrote an article about The Last of Us 2 for a French magazine, and I had to explain what the game is because a lot of the people
Mm.
on the team never heard about it. So they never heard about one of the biggest game of all time,
That's
one of the hottest TV shows of all time. They've
that's
never heard of it. They don't know
okay.
anything about it.
Yeah.
So if you want to reach people, you need to actually reach out to them because they will never magically appear and just enter. So yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Sorry, it
Nothing.
was a weird tangent about.
No, no, it's an interesting tangent though, because I mean, it's even things that are really mainstream are not there for
No.
everyone. I mean, I know
No.
that I have blind spots, and I'm very happy for having those blind spots. I'm usually
Yes.
skilled at some horrible things,
Yeah.
but
But
people miss stuff.
this is a very important thing to point out. Is I think our generation is in the middle, but there is no longer a one topic. There
Yeah.
is no longer one cultural thing. It's very very rare nowadays. Maybe once every 2 or 3 years, you have one thing that everybody hears about
Mm.
because it touches everyone.
A Game of Thrones,
But
for example.
Game of Thrones, I would say like K-pop Demon Hunters, probably the last one
Oh
we had.
God,
And
yes.
I'm sorry because your
I
kid probably.
did too much of that. Too much of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Sorry, I was going
But
on
it's
the
good.
on the.
At least it's not horrible, which is a very good thing.
Yes,
It's
exactly. I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
That helps a lot.
So yeah, I don't know if there was a question at the beginning of that. Yeah.
I
So how do I work with the team? Really, it's trying to find references,
Mm,
sharing the creative process with them, being extremely clear about the different steps and what am I doing. Most of the time, a lot of creative frustration comes from, oh, you decided something without asking me, and
mm,
I am the game director. It's like, yeah, sure, I didn't know I had to check with you for every detail. So now I'm really trying to involve everyone and be like, this is what I'm doing this week. This is what I'm delivering on Friday. This is the kind of
mhm.
documents I'm working on. This is, and then if you have time, if you want us, we can sit down and we can brainstorm. I can go through ideas. We can, and this is very cool because the I think the important thing, and this is again very cynical, but I've been a freelancer for 9 years now, so unfortunately you have to be a bit cynical. At one point, you need to pretend that you need to want to share so people will not be frustrated,
Mm.
rather than not sharing and them being frustrated. And
Yeah,
most of the time, if you
this is good
say, "Oh,
advice.
we could," most of the time, just asking, we can have a meeting and brainstorm together, and the people, the other people will be like, "I don't have time to do that. I actually trust you," and then you're on your own, and it's perfect. It's the best way to
That's cunning
handle.
and brilliant. This is the most important thing we've covered
No.
today. Now, I won't ask you my final question yet. I'll have a look at the chat. So, one question is again by Cyan Hith. What are your personal favorite games in terms of narrative design?
No, that's a very good question. I'm gonna try to find games from different
And,
eras.
and while you are at it, there's a very
Yeah,
compatible question, which is unheard of indie games that you consider to be great.
unheard. Okay,
Well,
so
not
unheard
unheard
is
of, but like
yeah.
not.
So there is a game called Ord, ORD, and it's a text-based game, which is it's so good. It's like €4. It's so much fun. It's hilarious.
Where is
Uh,
that? Where do we find that? On
O
Steam?
R D dot. Oh,
Okay, I
it's a
found it.
nightmare to find.
I will post it in the chat.
Yeah. It's basically you have three words and you need to, and you have like a, yeah, so the first one is really good. You just have a word, it says raccoon, and you can fight or ignore the raccoon, and it's just three words all time. It's amazing, like stuff from Bat with the dev, brilliant, really brilliant stuff. You probably never heard of it, so I'm
Oh,
really happy.
I'm
It's
very
a
happy
game
you
I,
said that.
yeah, it's literally, let me find the oh, it's free to play now. It's not even, you don't even pay for it anymore.
Oh,
This is wonderful. It's incredible. That's what that was my. I'm so happy to think about this one for once. Inkle, so the studio, the studio which made the ink tool I mentioned earlier, made a game called Heaven's Vault, which
is
is,
brilliant.
for me, it's their best game. Yeah, so it's brilliant about language, the sense of discovery, of exploring another language. It's just amazing. It's an amazing experience. If you haven't played it, just play it. Just, yeah, it's really incredible. I have a sweet spot for. I have a sweet. It's kind of weird, maybe. I don't know. Is it weird?
I will tell you.
It's
I'm
kind
the
of weird.
I'm the person who will judge all those things.
I think that Uncharted 2 and 3 are
Hmm.
probably the best blockbusters of the century. These are such fun games, and the way the story evolves, the story beats. So there is one very interesting thing with Uncharted and a lot of linear games that we don't really do anymore. Unfortunately, it's the idea that you can really shape your game in advance, that you can really structure the emotional pacing, and playing a game like I think that God of War, Valhalla, and Ragnarok did that pretty well as well. It's how do you create an experience which is uh, such a bombastic, epic, and also intimate moment. I think that those games are really good at exploring the scale of games. And then maybe let me find a game which is not made the Western Hemisphere. I don't know if I'm going to find it.
In the meantime, let me just say that there's a comment saying that Naughty Dog really knows how to create experiences.
Yes. Yeah, I think
We'll have to
I'm not a huge fan of Last of Us for a lot of reasons, and I said I was not going to talk about it. But
yeah,
again,
I
like,
think I know what you have in mind, and it's probably
yeah,
a specific mentality but still,
Yeah.
still, it does some
Yeah,
wonderful
still.
things. Yeah.
It's the way they are able to structure the emotional experience is kind of brilliant. I have an idea. I have a thing. So I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a moment in Xenoblade 3 which is way too long. It's really too long. It's a JRPG. There is a moment of emotional release which I was crying while unlocking like the super form of my main character and unlocking a new feature in the combat after like 70 hours of gameplay while I was crying. And it was such a powerful moment, which I think that I mean, Xenoblade, Monolith, the studio behind Xenoblade is really good at that, but a lot of JRPGs are also really powerful when it comes to, I'm going to give you a new narrative, I'm going to give you a new game design feature which is going to make sense emotionally to you. And I think this is something that we don't see a lot in Western games. I really like that moment. If you know, you know, as people say on the internet.
Okay, now you've really intrigued me, and
It's a really long game. I'm very sorry to tell you that it's a really long game.
Look this appealing to me, to be honest. But
I understand.
What you say is very intriguing, though, and it's also
No, but
mechanical, which makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, and you can't really I can't show you the scene, and you will be like, sure, What do you mean? You know what?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
in the moment to feel that emotional release. And the game has a couple of. I mean, the four games, not the X, but the three main games they all have at least one moment with just like what the heck? And you are playing at the same time, and it's brilliant.
Awesome. So before we get any other questions, I have to ask you,
Yeah,
and this is the final thing I really want to ask you. It's like,
yeah.
what are the your proudest moments of working in video games and writing for this interactive medium?
Oh, this is tough.
I know.
We still get message. We still get a lot of emails for some for Flat Eye, but most of them are for Nightcall.
Mm, I'm happy to
As
hear that.
7 years after, we get very very moving emails, which I never thought I would get one day. Just like, oh, I read this character. It's my life. How did you know? I was moved to tears. I showed the game to everyone. I was like, oh no, oh no. It's kind of weird because I think when you're a writer, you kind of hope that fiction will ring true, and then when it rings true, it's like, oh no, what have I done? It's kind of strange, but I really like Flat Eye. I think it's a float game, and we had a lot of issues when we were making it, and unfortunately, it's not as good as we hoped and we wanted and we worked for. But probably every week or every 2 weeks, we're sending we're sharing articles between the devs. We're like, oh, we talked about that. We mentioned that in the game, because the way we were making the game 5 years ago now, we were really trying to think about how technology changes us and
Mhm.
shapes the life, shapes our everyday life. And AI was there. I mean, Gen AI and LLMs existed at the time, but they were not as part of the conversation
Prevalent.
as
Yeah.
it is now. And nowadays, like, we see stuff and we're like, oh, this is just like the character in Flat Eye. Oh God, this is so sad. And it's yeah, the game really, it was a failure, but it rings true for me, so it's good.
Yeah, but I sort of expected to hear that it would be something from Nightcall. I mean, you obviously cannot look at this game as everyone else does, because
Yeah,
everyone else. But it was and it still is a truly wonderful and very unique game. And
yeah,
I mean, from my perspective, it's also a fascinating way to explore a city. And I could turn it into a comedy game just by having it take place in Athens with the tax drivers, discussing everything from
yeah,
geopolitics to
yeah.
wonderful conspiracies all the time. So yeah, that would be
Thank you.
brilliant. So again,
Yeah, questions,
I will be
questions.
going over the rest of the chat. I'm certain that you have missed some comments and questions. Again, people, this is probably your last chance. Okay, there's this question. Which game are we talking about? So the game we're talking about right now, Pierre, is Nightcall, which is this narrative taxi driving game in Paris. I don't know, which is also a murder mystery. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is the not the most condensed way of putting it. So I have to say that again, we will be live with Anthony on the 9th of April, and we will be discussing his course, how to prototype video game
Yeah.
narratives with short stories. So please, do grab your obviously free ticket on Eventbrite, and we can you know you can ask things, we can tell you things, Anthony can tell you things. And now let me very very quickly, cheers. Let me go very quickly, see if I've missed some. There are lots of comments today, so I probably missed
And thank you
something.
for all the comments. I can't see them, so it's kind of scary.
No, it's fine. They all say lovely things about you. But yeah, this is another thing that I missed. So again, Dan Krilopoulous said that about people who think that writing is very easy, and that everyone can write up to a degree. And what he points out is the difference is that not everyone can write well and fast and flexibly, and there is actually this difference between everyone being able to paint, but not everyone being Michelangelo, or not everyone being
Yeah.
this. You have to work on a craft, and that is very. Generally speaking, working on things helps, right?
I can say one thing is I think if you want to be a writer, you need to like writing more than having ideas. Because at one point you need to stop having ideas and you need to effing sit down and effing write.
Turn them into something, yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's really hard.
And
But yeah,
yeah, because I mean, that was very interesting for me because at some point I remember Lucy Kiriakido, she's an artist in games, and I remember the one time that I actually met her in person, we were talking about things, and she said that she despises when people go to her and tell her, "Oh, you're so talented," and it's like, no,
yeah,
I've been working like for hours and hours and years upon
yeah,
years, and it's not just it's not talent, it's
yes,
just work.
yes.
And then again, this is something I've never considered, and this is a very interesting comment. So Matthew Willis says that fan fiction
Hi,
is
Matthew.
emerging as a mainstream avenue for writing, and perhaps this might be a good way to practice and hone one's craft. I don't know. I've
Yes,
never
yeah.
the idea.
It's a very very good point. I mean, if anyone basically being a writer for games in 2026 means you're going to be a fan fiction writer,
Effectively, yeah.
in the sense that most of the time you will join a team. Either there is already a franchise or world or story or existing, or you're gonna riff on someone else's ideas. So at one point, and I think there is a bit of hypocrisy around that, but if you can write a really good Game of Thrones fact fiction, then you can probably write other stuff well.
Never thought of it
You
that way.
know. No, I mean, if, at one point when we started to work on Battlestar Galactica, it was more like, okay, I need to sit down and rewatch a bunch of episodes
Yeah,
until I know where I'm going and how can I find the right path to do a game which is Battlestar without being Battlestar. And it's fan fiction. It's
yeah, you're right.
yeah, and some studios are like, no, do not send. Some people are like, oh, I hate seeing fan fiction in your portfolio. This is this
It's
is this is bullshit.
yeah, but it's interesting because I mean, whenever you think about fan fiction, you tend to think about something that's done in a very amateurish way, which is obviously fine, and you always sort of put it at a lower pedestal than the original thing. But then if you
Yeah,
think that what is later considered canon started as fan fiction, because
yeah,
yeah, that's very interesting. So another cool point that Lost Train did. So who has worked in a variety of actually adventure games suggests is that maybe ink writers would be wise to start by writing something that's like a 10 nodes maximum long piece of interaction
yes,
fiction with a gauntlet narrative structure. I don't know what you think about that.
yeah. Oh, can I find that? I had oh, I need to find. I know I have some exercises for people if they want to. Uh, how can I find that? Ooh, ooh.
I do not know, but I can tell you that Silent Heath cannot sleep at night because of random ideas. And this is why people should have kids, because whenever you get time, then you sleep, and that lasts for years upon years. So you won't have to worry about ideas anymore.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I know that at one point I had a I had a GitHub with a bunch of templates for ink, and I had like a postcard, a tombstone generator, a postcard generator, and the escape game thing. But I don't know
That's so cool. Thanks.
how to get to it anymore. I need to find it somewhere. It's I haven't been on that thing for a while. This is not good.
Now,
Oh.
Tombstone Generator. This would be a very interesting, procedural writing exercise. I mean, you
Yes.
just create one in ink. So
Yes.
anyway, I will ask one final time if there's any other question. If not, I think we're already at like an hour and a half here.
It,
So I think we've covered a lot of ground. So
yeah.
thank you so much for that, and thank you for taking the time, and thank you for making the course and all those things that you very very graciously have agreed to do. And also thanks everyone for being here again. You can join us again on the 9th of April. So that's roughly, I cannot count very well. It's like 2 weeks from now, roughly. And I don't know. Have a good night. Have a good
Yeah.
day. Good afternoon.
Thank you everyone for joining and commenting.
And please, if you haven't done so yet, absolutely do try Nightcall. I cannot recommend it, enthusiastically enough. So, thanks again, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
And be well.